Today we'll be doing 8-7 patterns extending tables. So this is kind of what you've been going over, how you've had the table and you would write a rule. Just that in this lesson you're going to be extending the tables that the rule is in. So the first thing you will need to do is copy these 3 vocabulary words into your math notebook, and the first word is corresponding, and the definition of that would be matching terms in a pattern. Sequence, that's your next word, is a set of numbers that follow a pattern, and then term is the numbers in a sequence or variables such as x and y in an algebraic expression. Remember that word variables, that is like x and y because it is a letter. So just go ahead and copy those 3 things down so you can go back to look at these when you're stuck on a problem if it's because of the wording. So go ahead and pause this video, write this down, and then continue listening to me, please. You have already learned to find a rule to write an expression that describes it. Today you're going to learn how to use a rule to write a sequence of terms. You will also learn how to compare 2 different rules. So like I said, we're just expanding on what you have already learned. So first I would like you to copy this chart. After you're done, please listen to the question. So Maria and Elsie have new piggy banks. Maria saves $2 each week. Elsie saves $4 each week. If neither of them spend any of the money, how do their savings compare after a year? So, right when they got their new piggy banks, that's when we are at the start. So they have $0 in their piggy bank. So the first question I want to ask you is how much did Maria save each week? Well, she saved $2 each week. So I'm just going to put a +2 by Maria's row. And we can either put +2 or we could put the word add to because this is her rule. What's Elsie's start? Her start is 0. And then what is her rule? To add how many dollars a week? Add $4 a week. Better put a $sign up here. So let's make a table to show each sequence. So now that we know their rule, we are going to go straight across because these are 2 different people. So we're going to go straight across. So I want to know how much did Maria make or earn, I should say, keep by week 2. She started with 0. She added $2 week 1. She has to add $2 more week 2 because that's her rule, is adding $2 a week. So what will that bounce us up to? Well, if we do 2 plus the $2 she makes, that would be 4. So week 3, she would have 6. So basically, if you're adding by $2, you're just counting by 2 each week. Now, Elsie down here, she adds $4 each week. So she went from 0 to 4. And then we have to say, well, what's 4 plus 4? 8. Then what's 8 plus 4? $12. But the main question was, how did their savings compare after a year? So right now, we can only say how their savings was compared after 3 weeks of each of them saving, but we want to know how did their savings compare after a year. Well, since we're looking at weeks up here, we need to know how many weeks are in a year. So there are 52 weeks in a year, and I put WKS for shortening of weeks in a year. So how do you think we can find how much Maria saved in a year? Well, we would have to take how many weeks there were. There were 52 weeks, and then we would have to take her rule that she would add $2 each week, and we would need to times these together. We're timesing because we're finding out over a year, not just a week. So we can't add because that would take, well, we could add, but it would take a very long time. So 2 and 2 is 4. 2 times 5 is 10. So Maria, over the course of a year, saved up $104. Now Elsie, her rule is to add 4 each week, but there's 52 weeks, and we don't want to have to add because that would take forever for 52 times going up by 4s. So we'll just multiply. 4 times 2 is 8, and then 5 times 4 is 20. So she saved $208 for a whole entire year. But in my questions, it's saying how did it compare? So that word lets us know what's the difference between these two. And when I say difference or the word compare, you know we're subtracting. So we need to subtract 208 by 104 to see how they compared. So go ahead and do that, which we get $104. So that means Elsie has $104 more dollars, or twice as much as Maria. So on your practice work, you're going to see things like, or tables like this. And it's blank, but it tells me the rules down here. So I want you to look at one rule at a time. So rule A, it says start with 0, add 5. So this is all rule A. I'm only looking at the top row. So rule A, it tells me start with 0. I go to my start and I start with 0. Then it says add 5. So I add 5, and I will get $5 week 1. If I add another 5, by week 2 I'll have 10, and if I add another 5, by week 3 I'll have 15. Okay, done with that. Now rule B tells me to start with 0 and add 15. So week 1 I'll have 15, week 2 I'll have 30, and week 3 I will have 45. That is all this is wanting you to do. So this was just an example. You may write it down in your spiral, but you do not have to. It might help though. All right, I do want you to copy this in your spirals because you are going to be filling out this with me and answering some quiz questions along the way. So we have our 2 rules up top, and then we also have different columns that say term 1, term 2, and term 3. Now remember, terms are numbers in a sequence or variables such as x and y in algebraic expression. When you see this, don't let this freak you out. You can also just think of this as week 1, week 2, week 3. Think of it as you will, whatever helps you get through the problem. So let's go ahead and start filling this out. So rule A means I'm just looking at this top row. So it says start with 20. So I'm going to start with 20 and subtract 2 each time I go over. So 20 minus 2, what is 20 minus 2? Go ahead and put that in your quiz question. Okay, you should have gotten 18. What would the next 2 be? What would the next 2 be? You should have filled out 16 and 14. Now rule B, it says start with 40. So in your next quiz question, I want you to fill out all 3 of these. So the rule is start with 40, we did that, and subtract 2 each time. You tell me what goes in these 3 boxes, please. And you should get 38, 36, and 34. But this part of the question, this whole question is not over yet. So on your same sheet of paper, I want you to write. So on your practice work, you're going to see this line underneath. And it wants you to find the relationship between the corresponding terms. So it wants you to find the relationship between these terms going up and down. It wants you to tell me what is going on the entire time. So I'm going to go on to the next page so I can show you what they want us to put. So you'll have a line under, just like I said, you'll have a line down here. And it wants us to, I'll repeat myself, it wants us to find the relationship between the corresponding terms. So what do we notice about A and B? Well, first of all, we notice that on rule A, they're all smaller than what you get for B. But do we find a relationship or a pattern about how much smaller they are or how bigger rule B is than rule A in each one? So if you notice, I noticed that 20 and 40, there's a 10 difference. 18 and 38, there's a 10 difference. All of them have a difference of 10. So what I would put in this one, I would put that rule B is always 20 greater than rule A. because, oh, and I totally messed that up because all of these differences are 20. So that's why I put 20. So rule B is always 20 greater than rule A. That means rule B down here is always 20 places or 20 numbers bigger than what we started at rule A with. So go ahead and copy that down. And when you write this, I always want you to write about the second rule that you use. So we used rule A and rule B. When you have to compare the two, when you have to compare the relationship between the corresponding terms, I always want you to start with rule B. So if you had a chart and you had rule H and you had rule Z, I always want you to tell me about rule Z. Rule Z is always 80 bigger or 80 greater than rule H. Rule Z is always 20 less than rule H, things like that. So if you're doing your work, I want you to come back and watch this video. So right here, it will always say greater or less. And right here will always tell you how much it's by. If you have any questions, come talk to me and we will get it worked out.